Please welcome Andrew Ross Sorkin and his guest, television creator, producer, author, and CEO of Shondaland, Shonda Rhimes.
This is so exciting. Can I just say, Shonda Rhimes is here. What else can be said? You all know Shonda, and if you don't know her personally, you've watched so much of what she has done. Shonda Rhimes is the CEO of Shondaland. It's a global media company. She's the most consequential. We use the word consequential a lot because she is the most consequential TV writer and producer, I would argue, of this last generation. She's the creator of the hit TV series, including Grey's Anatomy, longest-running medical drama in history. And when she did it, I should say, she became the first African-American woman to create and produce a primetime drama ever. Let that sink in, people. She also created Scandal, How to Get Away with Murder, Private Practice, and Bridgerton, which I'm sure so many of you have seen, the most popular series ever on Netflix. It's been number one in 83 different countries now, and the list goes on. She's also normalized the very idea of diversity on the screen, which is something I want to talk about.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about storytelling, creativity, and so many other things. The influence of everything. But here's where I want to start.
Okay.
We've had a whole day here of conversations about a super polarized world.
Yes.
Super polarized.
Yes.
And you do something that's supposed to not be polarized. You do something that's supposed to be about bringing people together to sit together and watch the same thing and enjoy the same thing. And I'm so curious, as you've now had this remarkable career and this remarkable arc, how you've thought about the audience, the public, and this polarization that you've seen, and how you tell stories to that audience, and how you think about that at all.
I try to respect the audience in the sense that I hope that they're, even as polarized as they are, they're interested enough to sit down and hear the stories being told. And I happen to think that if you tell a story well enough, you can teach anybody anything without them even noticing they're being taught. And I don't mean that in a mind control way. I just mean it in the way that you can sort of talk about these things that are polarizing in ways that you certainly couldn't in public discourse.
Do you worry, though, that it's harder to create a program that doesn't send people in different directions? Do you think about today Bridgerton being a program that maybe everybody can embrace because it doesn't necessarily touch on the most hot-buttons issues? But then I was going to say Grey's Anatomy's touched on a lot of hot-button issues.
Yes.
Scandal's touched on a lot of hot-button issues.
I don't worry about that part. I want to tell a story that I'm passionate about, and I want to tell a story that I'm interested in. I don't necessarily worry that, this group of people or that group of people aren't going to watch it, mainly because they do watch it. That's been proven. And so I feel like my job is to entertain everybody.
Do you get pressure? You worked at ABC for a very long time. You're still with ABC to some degree, but now Netflix is your home. Do they ever say to you, look, we can't do this scene. This is not going to work in this environment? And I asked that. We were talking to Bob Iger about woke characters. I don't even know what woke means, but LGBT characters that there's a worry that somebody's going to protest or boycott and things like that. Do you get pushback as you're making these programs?
I don't get any pushback at Netflix, obviously, because they're always pushing boundaries. Network television is just a very different thing. They have standards and practices. And I had many an interesting conversation about the stories that we were telling, mostly having to do with queer stories and anything involving abortion of any kind.
Can we talk about the idea, and I said it at the top, that you have normalized the idea of diversity? And how much of that was a specific focus and thought, or was it something that you just did?
I wasn't going to make a show that didn't include me, where I couldn't see myself. That just never occurred to me. And to me, it wasn't a plan, like I'm going to do this thing. I was frankly shocked that when I looked at the television landscape, you never saw a scene with more than two people of color having a conversation with no white people around, unless it was a sitcom. Like, it didn't happen. And I didn't even understand that. So I just wrote a world that I feel exists, like the people I know and the conversations we have. The idea that when you have one character of color in something, just one, that character ends up being forced to talk about nothing but their color. like basically. They're always telling storylines about I was discriminated against here. They don't get to have the fully rounded stories. My favorite thing was getting to make Olivia Pope, this vicious, intelligent, smart, murderous, redeemed person.
Right.
In a way that you hadn't seen people on color being portrayed before.
How did you think about it in the context of Bridgerton?
Well, I, once again, wasn't going to make a show that didn't include me. And I really latched on to the fact that Queen Charlotte, there's lots of people who are saying Queen Charlotte could have been a person of color. And I just built the world from there. We weren't trying to tell it's not a history lesson. So we built the world from there.
Let me ask you one political question, then I'll leave this sort of area for a second, which is, I think, again, this goes to the polarization issue. There's a lot of people now who don't want to speak out on lots of different issues. Mm-hmm. We actually have seen a number of CEOs on the stage who I think are a little cautious about how they're going to do it, and what they're going to say. The creative community has never been like that, actually. I believe you support President Biden.
Yes.
I think you're doing a fundraiser for him.
I am.
Do you think about that in the back of your mind? Do you worry? Do you say to yourself, oh, my goodness, if people realize this or that, they're going to boycott my programs? I mean, I ask because we watched this sort of remarkable backlash that's happened. I'm thinking of Target. I'm thinking of Budweiser, all of these things that have happened in the past year or two that we hadn't seen before.
It's interesting. There have always been times when we've gotten the letters of, I can't believe you did that, I'm never watching again. But really what that means is, I hate that you did that. And next week when I watch, I'm going to hate that as well. Truly. It's never really driven away viewers. And I haven't really thought of it that way. I know we're in a much different era now, especially now. But I've already shown everybody who I am and the stories I'm going to tell. So I'm not necessarily worried that they're going to be offended by something I did already.
Let's talk about your move from ABC to Netflix and just the whole shift. Yes. Because we talked to David Zaslav, we talked to Bob Iger. By the way, Reed Hastings has been here before twice. The storytelling mechanism. Did you say to yourself, I want to leave linear television because I want to create bingeable programming? Mm-hmm. Did you leave because you thought, wow, these people are going to give me enormous opportunity to do whatever I want to do, and they're going to pay me an extraordinary amount of money?
It's interesting. At that point, it wasn't about the money. I really didn't, and my agent's going to hate that I said that, but I really didn't care about the money. I had been making television at one place for such a long time, and I had been, whether this sounds good or not, sort of doing it at the top of my game and enjoying it. And at the time, I remember The Crown was on Netflix. Mm-hmm. And I remember looking at that and someone telling me that they spent $12 million an episode on The Crown. And I thought, that's an insane, amazing creative budget. That budget is insane. You can really do stuff. And you could see that they could do things there that you can't do on network television. I liked the challenge of that. I liked the idea that, I remember meeting with Ted Sarandos and sort of having the conversation where I said, I just want to make shows and be left alone, as opposed to having to deal with broadcast standards and practices and all that stuff.
Do you like the bingeable idea? The reason I ask is I think everybody's chased the sort of Netflix dream. And one of the things that everyone's figured out pretty quickly is unless you're doing it at Netflix, it kind of doesn't, the economics of it don't work.
Right.
That you'd be better off rolling out a show on a weekly basis, even as a streamer, drop it, try to keep the subscribers so you don't have the churn. Does it change the way you think, though, about even storytelling itself? The idea that someone could sit there and watch, 8 or 10 episodes at one shot versus wait and do it over 8 or 10 weeks?
Absolutely. I mean, as an economic model, it works for Netflix, but it doesn't work for anybody else. But in my mind, the difference is when I was writing network television, I had to make sure you came back after the commercial break, and then I had to make sure that you were going to be well enough, remember what we did well enough to come back an entire week later to watch again, to keep watching. I had to keep my viewers. When you're doing bingeable television, your viewers are already there, and either they're going to stay or they're not based on whether or not they like the story. It's not a week-to-week-to-week basis. And I like that.
What kind of data do you get? There's a big question about, ratings and the feedback, the actual feedback. Do you need that?
No.
You don't need it. Why not?
People are obviously watching, so I like to worry about the things I can control, and I cannot control the ratings. I cannot control the data.
Do you see the ratings at ABC, obviously?
I get them.
And do you think about them? Do you say, you know what, that episode, for some reason, it didn't work the way I thought it was going to work, or that episode killed and I didn't even expect it to kill?
I hadn't paid attention to the ratings in about 10 years, really. And I think that that's healthy. There's something about sort of living and dying by those numbers that's a little exhausting.
Let me ask you this. You have now made, I can't even get the full list out of all the shows, but I don't think you've had one failure yet. And, I mean, not even a pilot canceled. Mm-hmm. And so the question is, who can you, if you don't have failure, right, gives you probably some confidence. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
But also, who can you go to who can say, you know what, Shonda, this idea is good, but it's not great. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I love the fact that if I want to make a show, they want to make a show. I love that. But I also think that part of the responsibility that comes with not having failure, not having faced it, is to remember that if there are no fences, that doesn't mean you should do everything just because you can. You absolutely can't work that way. You can't, because they're going to let you, just do whatever you want. I feel like the quality control is important. I only make shows that I'm obsessed with and I want to watch, and that's it.
How complicated was the strike for you? And I ask because you were sitting there as a producer, you were also sitting there as a writer, and you were sitting there, for being very honest, as a supremely highly paid writer. Mm-hmm. Deservedly so. We're not taking it away. But how do you think about that? And you have writers in your room that you work with, and what are you saying to yourself?
Well, you know, for me, the strike wasn't complicated at all. I consider myself to be a writer first and foremost, so I was a writer on strike. And I was very aware that I'm not on strike the way a lot of people are on strike. You know, I don't live in L.A., so I wasn't on the picket lines every day. I wasn't going to lose my job or my house or my car or not be able to pay my kids' school tuition. But the strike was for those people, for the people who make much less as writers than I do, who are trying to get a living wage and who are trying to make sure that their futures are assured too. Was there any moment, did you have any difficult conversation, were you ever worried that somebody was going to come to you and say, Shonda, you're part of this. You moved everybody on to Netflix, and then they all tried to chase the fever dream. I will admit that I was sort of waiting for someone to say, you made the first big deal that started people moving into streaming, like having deals in streaming. And therefore, like, this is partially your fault. Because, you know, I just said, I want to go there and this is what I want to do. And it did start, then Ryan came and it started Ryan Murphy, it started a big sort of chain of people moving to streaming. Is there a competition, by the way? I mean, you and Ryan Murphy are sort of the top of the top here. Do you guys compete? Do you feel like you compete with each other? I remember there was a lot of just chatter when both these deals were made about how much everyone was getting paid and who was getting paid more. I think people really like the idea that there might be a rivalry, but I don't even think we make the same kind of programs. And I mean that in the best way. Ryan makes some great stuff, but we don't make the same kind of stuff. So to me, there's no... And also, you can't be competitive in storytelling. Like, there's not an Olympic storytelling medal. Like, it doesn't work. You said something that I don't know if the public knows, which is that you don't live in Hollywood anymore. Yes. You live on the East Coast here. I live on the East Coast now. So when did that happen? I made a pandemic move. In the middle of the pandemic, I had been at home and I had edited all the episodes of Bridgerton from home and done all of that work from home and realized that I don't actually physically need to be anywhere to do my job. And that was a revelation to me because I was a person who lived in the office, lived on the set. And to get to pack up and move, I think it was life-saving health-wise. I think it was great for me stress-wise. And it allowed all of these amazing people who work for me to really get to do what they do without me even having the possibility of looking over their shoulder. Do you miss L.A.? Do you think L.A. is bad for mental health? I mean, do you... I'm not going to say that. I do not miss L.A., and I'm very surprised by that. I thought I would at least a little. I do not miss L.A. at all. I miss my friends. I don't miss L.A. I want to talk to you about something you said on a TED Talk. You also said it in your book, and this is the year of yes. And it's something that there are a lot of people in this room that are very high achievers. Mm-hmm. And you said something that I thought actually took a lot of courage and candor too in that book about this, and in front of folks in your TED Talk. You said that sometimes you enjoy your work more than spending time with your family. Yes, I did say that.
A lot of people don't like to say that out loud.
And I get that. I mean, I feel like one of the reasons I wrote the book, and one of the charges that came to me when I wrote the book, was that I was going to have to be as honest as I make my characters, and as vulnerable as I make my characters. So I was really very clear that if I was going to do this, I was going to tell it all. I really hesitated over saying that. I really did, but it's true.
What are your children? Did your children know you said that?
No, they don't know. I'm lucky because I have a 21-year-old who's not interested in anything I do at all, which is great. And then my other ones are smaller, so they were babies when I said that.
I have a writing question, craft of writing, and there's a lot of writers in this room as well, about how you write. And I always say there's sort of two types of writers. Some who like to write every word, and each word has to be perfect on the page before they can write a word of it. They need to know it exactly. And there's other people who sort of splatter a lot of stuff down on the page, and they think they're going to go back and fix it afterwards. They just need to get it out of them, and then they are in the fix-it mode.
Right.
I, by the way, am I need to get the right words down first. I'm in the view of I can only upgrade it by one letter grade. So if it goes down as a B, I can get it to an A. If it goes down as a C, it's never getting better than a B.
Okay.
What about you?
I actually feel like I write the shows in my head, meaning I don't sit down at my computer, metaphorically put pen to paper, unless I already know what the show is. So generally, when I write something, that first draft, with maybe a few changes, like maybe one or two changes, is really the draft we shoot. And that's because that's just how my mind works. I cannot start writing until I know everything. And so I'll be walking around for like 6 months I'm supposed to be writing the drafts of the pilot or whatever. In reality, it's just me thinking.
Right. Well, here's a thinking question. I said there were no failures. Are there lots of ideas in your head that then you kill? That never,
Yes.
I mean, how many ideas have been in either development inside your company or inside your head that you went down a very long road on and then said to yourself, you know what, this is, for whatever reason, it's not going to work?
I think maybe there's been one or two projects that my company has done that we've gone down the road and thought like, this isn't going to work. We tried it. For me personally, if I say an idea out loud to somebody, once I've said it out loud and whatever their facial response is, I know whether or not that's an idea I want to do. And it's instantaneous.
We talked with Jay a little bit about the idea of confidence, of having confidence, and figuring out where confidence comes from.
Yeah.
You seem to have confidence from the very beginning. And I want to know where that comes from. And if there's ever moments where you're not that confident and you have some insecurities and you say to yourself, I don't know if this is working.
I have tons of insecurities, just like anybody else, obviously. But the only thing I've ever been confident in my entire life was that I could write. Like, I was super shy. I wasn't able to speak to people. I would almost pass out if I had to do anything in public, all those things. But I was always really confident with the fact that if I was writing something, it was good. And I've never worried about that, not since I was a little kid.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. To me, writing is like sitting down at a piano and discovering that you always knew how to play. Like, it's that feeling to me, and it's exciting. I think I was also raised by parents they raised 6 kids, and they were very comfortable making sure that we had an example of excellence and did not doubt ourselves. They were not interested in that.
Everybody's always trying to find a spark of an idea, how you get ideas, where you get ideas from, who you get them from, what are the moments that seem to have sparked ideas. And so I'm curious, if you go back and look at all of the things you've made and you think about sort of those eureka moments for yourself, do you have any, is there any trend line where you say to yourself, you know what, one of the things that I do is this?
One of the things I do, I mean, where the ideas come from, I don't know. I mean, like, they'll come from everywhere. I can be in the grocery store, I can overhear somebody say something, I can be talking to people about something, it doesn't matter. But one of the things I know that I always do, and I think it's fairly obvious, I don't know that anybody else does, is every show I write has somebody who's a novice who's learning about the world that I'm writing. Like, that is my way into a world, to bring the audience with me. Otherwise, I don't write a show about surgeons who jump in and are doing everything already. I write a show about surgeons who don't know what they're doing and may kill somebody. And so we watch them learn as we learn. That's the kind of thing I like to do mostly. And most of my shows have really followed that.
Okay, real quick, just news you can use. What are you watching right now? And what should we be watching? What do you love? And Anything?
I'm not watching television. And I know that's crazy. Yeah.
Netflix is not going to like that.
I mean, I encourage everyone to watch Netflix, obviously. But I have not watched, like, narrative programming in a while. And I think it's because I wanted to give my brain a break. You know, there's some really great stuff out there, and when it pours in, it sort of infects you, and then suddenly you want to write, like, I hear everybody loves a show called The Chef. Suddenly I think I'm worried I'm going to want to write a show about a chef. I don't know. So I don't like to be infected that way. But I also have been watching a lot more documentary programming, sports programming. I don't know why, but that's what's interesting to me right now.
What about books? You read a lot of books?
I read a lot of books.
Fiction, nonfiction?
I read a lot of books. I read a lot of fiction. I literally have a stack of books. Before the strike, it was even taller. But I have a stack of books that's like bed height in 2 or 3 rows right now of books I'm supposed to be reading. And I try to get through as many of them as I can when I can.
Shonda Rhimes, thank you for creating all of these worlds.
Thank you.
For all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Really appreciate this. This is fabulous. Thank you so very much. Thank you.